You know those conversations where all of a sudden the air just kind of changes?
Mm-hmm.
Things feel charged? Or maybe there's just a really deep misunderstanding, especially if you're talking about, well, sensitive stuff, identity, equity, those kinds of
Oh,
things.
absolutely. It can feel like walking on eggshells.
Yeah, or into a minefield.
Exactly. And those moments, they can be really disorienting for everyone involved, actually.
Yeah.
They really show where we often lack the understanding, maybe, or even just the practical skills to handle these issues well.
Issues that are super personal, but also like tied into bigger systems.
Precisely.
Well, that's exactly what we want to explore in this deep dive. Today, we're getting into equity and street level conversations.
So focusing on how we navigate those really challenging dialogues, specifically around race and identity.
Right, the everyday interactions. They might seem small, but they carry, well, enormous weight.
Hmm.
And the material we're using today, it has some incredibly powerful, like, real life stories and also a practical framework.
Yeah, a framework for trying to make those interactions more productive, more equitable, ideally.
So our mission really is to pull out the key insights. How can we approach these everyday conversations with, more understanding, more intention?
And maybe transform that potential conflict into a chance for deeper connection, maybe even real learning,
Exactly. We're going to break down this really interesting concept called the warm demander.
and show you how that approach might actually lead to real change in your own interactions even.
Okay, so let's jump right in. There's this scene, it's from the source material, that really sets things up.
Okay,
So imagine this. There's a male student, Jason. He's of African and Latino descent. He's leaving his white teacher's classroom after school.
got it.
And the teacher asks Jason why he's angry because he's, quote, not getting the answer he wants.
Oof, okay.
Then the teacher asks, are you scared of me?
Oh.
And then comes this comment that just, well, it lands heavy. You are not even that dark-skinned.
Whoa, okay, yeah, that's a lot happening in one interaction.
Right. And what's striking is this isn't just made up.
No, it's based on a real story,
Yeah.
shared by a black male principal.
So it's a vivid example of how these moments, these everyday, seemingly small
They
things.
could have a huge impact right away on the student, obviously, but also on the teacher.
Yeah, and it just highlights how much our underlying identities are always there, always playing a role in how we talk to each other.
Definitely. And that dark skin comment specifically.
Yeah, the material really digs into that, how deeply that hit Jason. And it brings up this concept of colorism,
Right. Which, for anyone who might not know, is basically a product of systemic racism.
where lighter skin tones get privileged over darker ones, even within the same racial group.
Exactly. So a comment that one person might think is, I don't know, maybe offhand or even trying to be reassuring in a weird way.
Actually carries all this historical baggage, this systemic weight.
And it impacts Jason really personally, very deeply.
So this brings up a huge question, doesn't it? Why do these conversations feel so difficult, so fraught?
Yeah. And often it's not because people don't care, right?
Yeah.
It might be more about lacking the skills, maybe.
Or just feeling overwhelmed. There's so much information about bias, systemic inequity.
It's easy to just freeze up or say the wrong thing or miss the mark completely.
Totally.
And that's exactly where this idea, the warm demander approach, offers a possible way forward.
The warm demander. Okay, I'm intrigued. That name itself makes you wonder, like, how could that actually shift things? What does it mean?
Yeah, it's a great term. It comes from author Lisa Delpit,
Okay.
and she defines a warm demander as someone who uh, expects a great deal of others, convinces them of their brilliance, and helps them reach their potential in a disciplined and structured environment.
Huh. So it's not just about being demanding.
Not at all. The key is demanding with warmth. It's rooted in this genuine, like unwavering belief in the other person's ability to grow, to change.
Ah! Okay, so high standards, but wrapped in belief and care.
Exactly. It's a really powerful combination. It changes the whole dynamic.
Hmm.
Or
That makes sense. So how does this help move beyond just reacting to like one bad moment? How does it connect bigger?
great question.
Yeah.
Because warm demanders, according to this material, don't just focus on what happened in that one interaction.
Right.
They try to get into the why. Why does this matter? They help connect that single moment to the bigger picture, the broader context, the systemic stuff.
Ah, okay. So it's helping people see the roots of the issue, not just the surface incident.
Exactly. It's moving beyond just reacting towards a deeper understanding. and hopefully real transformation.
So what does being a warm demander actually look like? In practice, the source material lays out 4 core principles,
It
right?
does. 4 principles that really define the stance. The first one is belief in the impossible.
Okay, belief in the impossible. That sounds ambitious.
It does, but it's less about pure optimism and more about recognizing our own internal biases, how we might prejudge who's capable of learning or changing.
So it's about my own belief first.
Yes. Even when you feel skeptical or frustrated, the warm demander makes a choice. They choose to see potential. It's like turning what feels like a wall into a possible door.
Okay, I like that. Choosing to see potential, that leads into the second principle then.
Directly, which is building trust, or what the source calls relational capital.
Relational capital, like an investment in the relationship.
Exactly like that. Trust is just fundamental for these conversations.
Yeah.
It gets built when people actually take the time to listen, to show they care.
Not just rushing to fix things.
No, really listening. And that builds up this reservoir of trust, this capital.
So when things get tough, you have something to draw on.
Precisely. You can have those harder conversations, talk about uncomfortable truths, without the relationship just breaking down.
Okay, so we have belief in potential and we have trust as the foundation. How does the warm demander guide growth then?
That brings us to principle 3. Teach self-discipline.
Self-discipline. That could sound a bit controlling.
Yeah, but it's framed very differently here. It's not about control or just making people comply. It's about combining really high expectations with deep respect.
High expectations and respect. How does that work?
Well, the source has this great line. I respect you, and therefore I'm not going to lower my bar for you.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's powerful.
Isn't it? It's that mix of belief, I know you can meet this bar, and trust, I respect you enough to hold you to it, that actually helps people develop self-regulation. It's not just external pressure.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so what's the fourth principle?
The fourth one is embrace failure and courageous conversations.
Embrace failure. Okay.
This really emphasizes having a growth mindset, not just for the other person, but for yourself too, as the person trying to engage.
So being okay with not getting it perfect.
Exactly. And being willing to lean into those uncomfortable talks, like about racial literacy, for example, instead of shying away from difficult truths.
You ask what's next.
Yeah. A warm demander focuses on growth, asking, what's next in your development? It shifts away from just blame or shame.
Okay, these 4 principles, belief, trust, self-discipline through respect, and embracing failure, they paint a really clear picture. But knowing the principles is one thing.
Right. How do you actually do it?
Yeah.
Especially in the heat of the moment, when things feel tense.
Exactly. Well, the source gives us a roadmap for that too, doesn't it? The warm demander travel plan.
It does. A very practical 3-component plan. It's show strength, challenge plus offer choice, and listen plus affirm.
Okay, let's take those one by one. First, show strength. What does that mean in this context? It's not about aggression, right?
No, definitely not aggression. It means being grounded in your core vision, your equity values.
So knowing what you stand for.
Yes. And not getting pulled into, say, deficit language, or what the source calls white fragility.
Can you unpack white fragility a bit based on the source?
Sure. The source defines it as the discomfort and defensiveness a white person might feel when they're confronted with issues of racial inequality or injustice.
Got it. So showing strength means not getting derailed by that defensiveness.
Right. It's about staying calm, clear-headed, maybe using humor strategically or intensity, or even sharing a personal story to kind of set the stage with purpose.
Being firm, but not rigid.
Exactly. Firm in your convictions.
And thinking back to Jason's story, his mother really showed that strength, didn't she, when she insisted on having that deeper conversation?
Absolutely. And Jason himself shows strength in how he advocated for himself during that initial difficult interaction.
It's not about volume, it's about like unwavering values.
Well put. Okay, so after showing strength, the next step is challenge plus offer a choice.
Challenge and choice, how does that work?
This is about helping the other person see the systemic issues at play. Maybe see how racism is operating in the situation.
Kind of zooming out from the personal feeling to the pattern.
Exactly. And it's about flipping the script a bit, sharing power, helping them feel some agency, and crucially, empowering them to make a choice about what they do next.
How do you do that? Offer a choice.
The material suggests a really key question here. What kind of educator or person or leader do you want to be?
Oh, that's good. It reframes it, doesn't it?
Completely. It turns the challenge from an accusation, you did this wrong, into an opportunity. Here's a gap between your actions and your likely values. What do you want to do about that?
It connects to their own sense of self, their own values. That feels really empowering, actually.
It is. And we see this in Jason's story, too.
Oh, so.
Well, Jason takes the initiative, right? He invites his mother to meet the teacher. That's presenting a challenge, an opportunity for a different conversation.
Right. And then later, the teacher invites Jason's mother back to discuss further.
Yes. The teacher, perhaps after some reflection, recognizes the chance to engage differently and chooses to take that path. It's about seeing that choice point.
Okay, so show strength, challenge, plus offer choice.
Right.
What's the final step?
The final component is listen plus affirm.
Listening seems key throughout, but what's specific here?
This is about, first, listening to yourself.
Yeah.
Checking it with your own body, your own reaction.
Pausing before reacting.
Yes. And then really listening to the other person, with your ears, obviously,
Yeah.
but also your eyes paying attention to nonverbals, giving undivided attention,
Deep listening.
very deep. And crucially, it involves centering voices from the margins, and then affirming the person,
Affirming them, even if they messed up.
affirming their humanity,
Yeah.
affirming their capacity to learn and grow. It's basically saying, I hear you, I see the potential here, and I believe you can move forward from this.
That feels incredibly important, that affirmation piece.
It really is. You mentioned Jason listening to his mother's story earlier.
Yeah, that built trust between them.
Exactly. That was him listening and affirming her experience. And this kind of deep, strategic listening, tuning into the words, the message, the nonverbals, it helps counter something the material calls the fundamental attribution error.
Ah, right. That's our tendency to blame someone's character.
Yeah, to explain their behavior based on who we think they are, rather than looking at the situation, the external pressures, the systemic factors that might be influencing them.
So listening and affirming helps us see the bigger picture, beyond just snap judgments.
Precisely. It pulls back the lens.
Okay, so this whole warm demander approach, the principles, the travel plan, what does it all mean when we zoom out? What are the bigger implications?
Well, the key takeaway is that these street-level conversations, they aren't just isolated moments.
They're connected.
They're like micro-reflections of much bigger systemic issues. And the way we handle even the smallest conversation, if we use this warm demander approach,
It can have ripples.
a huge ripple effect. It can actually start to shift the culture. In small ways at first, maybe, but significantly over time.
So individual changes can actually lead to collective change.
That's the idea. These individual interactions done with warmth and demand, they add up. They contribute to building, say, an anti-racist adult culture, whether that's in a school or an office or a community group.
Moving from just handling individual conflicts to aiming for, like, collective liberation.
Exactly. It's a journey, right?
Yeah.
Towards a more equitable future. And the source suggests it requires that trust we talked about, acting on what we learn from these conversations and being bold, visionary even, in how we make decisions.
Wow, okay. That's a powerful connection from the tiny interaction to the big vision.
It really is. And that kind of brings us to the end of this deep dive.
Yeah, lots to think about.
Definitely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Think about how these concepts, this whole warm demander stance, showing strength, challenging with choice, listening to affirm, how might that apply beyond just the educational context we focused on?
Right, like in our workplaces, communities.
Even in our closest personal relationships, how could embracing this approach maybe transform those interactions too?
And what assumptions, maybe deep-rooted ones, might you be able to question or unpack in your own life now that you've explored these ideas with us?
Something to mull over.